Hey guys, in this video I'll be going over all 8 mandatory poses and the current bodybuilders that are the best in each. I've done a video on this in the past on the 8 mandatory poses and the best bodybuilders of all time in each. However, I thought this would be a fun modern twist. I'll try my best to objectively choose a current pro with the best physique and in each pose, giving a concise overview on why I picked them. Who do you think is the best in each pose currently? Let me know down below. Let's get into it.
Don't worry guys, I'll take over from here, and there's no better place to start than with the front double. Right off the bat, there are a few competitors that come to mind. You have Nick Walker for those arms, Michael Krizo with tons of mass, Derek Lunsford for that X-frame, and Andrew Jacked with a physique carved out of marble. All of these guys either have very complete poses or have an element of freak factor that really puts them overboard. There could be an argument for Samson Dauda for all that size and the structure, or Hadi Chupin for his condition and shape. However, I do believe that both are rather weak in the arms and don't necessarily have the most beautiful shape out there. Like I said, all the aforementioned guys have a chance at winning, and this sort of becomes subjective at some point. However, I would say that it's firmly between Andrew and Krizo. Although Derek has amazing shape and symmetry, there really is no denying that his lacking arms cannot contend with the best of the best in this pose, and Nick's outer quad sweep sort of leaves his physique looking extremely upper body heavy. Now, Krizo and Andrew have virtually zero flaws in this pose, with Krizo quite possibly having the best arms and the freakiest size, while Andrew is a pure statue. I'd probably give an edge to Andrew here since he has a far better midsection, surprisingly similarly sized arms, and that bubbly round muscle quality. Krizo may be freaky and massive, however Andrew is pieced together absolutely perfectly for this pose. The front lat spread is a pose where I believe you need to have a beautiful structure, a small waist, great proportions, and of course low, flared lats to really have an S-tier pose. Look at the best of the best in this shot like Ronnie Coleman or Dorian Yates, who had some of the best proportions for every mandatory to be fair, but especially in this one. In my opinion, the man who comes the closest to these legends and who has the best front lat spread currently would be Andrew Jacked. There's a reason they call him Mr. Olympia from the front, because this guy absolutely kills everyone frontally. He's really got it all: the small waist, great arms and delts, flared quads, and a tight chiseled midsection. His lats aren't like Dorian's or Ronnie's, however his overall flow and aesthetics are quite possibly better than theirs. Big Ramy is another contender for this pose, however I feel as though his days are numbered and he probably isn't the best in this shot right now. Akeem Williams, Hadi, Samson, and a whole host of other competitors have great front lat spreads, however nobody dials it in and carries the total package quite like Andrew. The side chest is a shot which requires immense thickness from the side and crazy detail. Look at Kevin Levrone, Phil Heath, Ronnie Coleman, or Prime Ramy, and you'll see all the tools needed for success in this pose. Personally, I think that the best side chest pose currently would go to Samson Dauda. He is the thickest in the side leg out of really anyone, has shown some really good detail, especially at the Arnold UK, and has density for days upstairs. Although this doesn't really count, look at any of his progress updates in this pose and tell me he doesn't look absolutely freakish and ridiculously massive. While he could be more conditioned in certain areas, I do think that he has the best total combination of size, condition, and shape right now. Some others that could compete for this spot would be Rubio Mascara, since he has freaky mass and impressive side leg detail, Akeem Williams for similar reasons as well, and even Big Ramy, although I do think he may be past his prime. The rear double is rather simple. All you need is a good back, deeply cut hamstrings and glutes, and above average arms. I personally think that the arms don't necessarily matter as much as the back or the legs, as was the case for Dorian Yates. However, great arms do only add to the total package, like with Ronnie Coleman or Phil. So I think it should be rather easy to see who has the best rear double, since there really only is one competitor who brings Phil-esque shreds from behind, along with a back that is unmatched in current times. This is, of course, Derek Lunsford, who has the best rear double by far in my opinion, surpassing anyone from the top 10 in the back itself by a large margin. His hamstrings and outer quads may not be the best of all time, however his delts, glutes, and arms appear razor sharp and rather massive as well. The only competitors that even come close in some shape or form are Nick Walker for those arms, and the back and hamstrings are pretty good as well, Hadi Chupin for all that crazy density, Martin Fitzwater for the condition, and maybe Samson with all that mass. However, they either lack condition, size, or a combination of both, whereas Derek really has it all. The rear lat spread requires all the same things that the last pose did, however the arms don't really matter as much. Width is extremely important in the back, however that didn't stop more narrow competitors like Phil from claiming the title of the best rear lat spread at a point in time. Thickness and detail are definitely a necessity though, and many competitors these days don't really have the best backs relative to all the size they carry elsewhere. Personally, the man who I think has the best rear lat spread, taking everything into consideration, is Hadi Chupin. Look, while he may not be as conditioned as a guy like Derek in the lower body, his back is so wide relative to his frame, and his glutes and hamstrings are by no means weak. So much width on a smaller frame to the point where he beats taller guys like Samson, Andrew, and Ramy, who all have width but lack that quality muscle separation. While there could be an argument for Derek taking this spot, Hadi has so much pronounced back muscle and very solid definition, whereas Derek may look drier but lacks that sting and pop. Alright, the side tricep is up next, and this is a pose where there are a lot of variables that can decide whether or not someone has a good side tricep. First off, and most importantly, is the tricep itself, which is obviously the focal point of the pose. While there have been some great side tricep poses that included more mediocre triceps, like for instance Sean Roden's, having a meaty tricep like Phil Heath or Rolly Winkler really seals the deal. The midsection and side leg are also nearly as important, since you need to keep that waist in check and the side leg must be thick and detailed. In my opinion, I think there are two clear front runners for this pose. First off is Rubio Mascara, who has the thickest side leg, a ridiculously meaty tricep and chest, a tight defined midsection, albeit it is a bit big, and tons of overall mass. Next, you have Hunter Labrada, who may not look as freaky, however he has a far better tricep, great overall flow, a phenomenal side leg, and a more aesthetic shape. Personally, I think that Rubio looks more pleasing, however I think that Hunter is underrated and probably has a more balanced, pleasing physique in this pose objectively. Now, if you were allowed to hit the variation where you faced forward, flexing your quad instead of the side leg, a guy like Andrew would easily win. However, as it is, I think that the conventional side tricep would go to Hunter. Nick Walker could also be mentioned here, however his last appearance at the New York Pro didn't showcase the side tricep in the best light, so we'll just have to wait and see. Now overall, like I said, Hunter would probably win this objectively, however I personally prefer Rubio in this pose, or even Andrew in that more frontal side tricep shot. The Aban Thigh is a very straightforward apples versus oranges sort of pose. You know, if you prefer aesthetics and lines, you go with Andrew Jacked, and if you like sheer muscularity, condition, and hard work, you go with Hadi Chupin. The former has the most aesthetically pleasing Aban Thigh since Sean Roden or Flex Wheeler, quite possibly beating them in this area as well, having symmetry, shape, and roundness for days along with intricate detail everywhere. The latter has the most well-developed midsection currently and maybe of all time, solid symmetry, tons of muscle, but lacks the aesthetic quality. While I do think that Andrew looks twice as good from a shape and aesthetic standpoint, I have a feeling that Hadi at his best could beat him in the midsection. I really don't know though, these two are so close and have so many strong points, to where I'd say that they are about even in this pose. Let me know down below, who do you have winning this shot? Personally, I prefer Hadi Chupin, but, you know, Andrew is by no means bad. He's absolutely beautiful in this pose too, so like I said, let me know down below. The last pose is the most muscular, which is going to probably be extremely subjective considering how many competitors pull off an outstanding shot. I think that it's only fair to say that to be crowned the best in this pose, you must be great in every variation of the most muscular. Maybe every variation is a stretch, however you should at least be great in both the hands clasped and the crab, you know, at the very least. Hands on hip and one hand on hip are good as well, however the previous two are the most influential in my opinion. Now, right away, I think a guy like Michael Krizo would make it here because, you know, he has the freakiest crab most muscular right now, along with a great hands clasp due to his arms and crazy width. Another guy would be Hadi, who is arguably the best in the hands clasped, and still has a rather impressive crab, albeit not the best. Nick Walker is a similar story to Hadi Chupin, having a very good hand-clasped version. However, he's not the best in the most muscular crab variation, probably because he's not the widest or the tallest, and his arms really overpower everything else. Now, I really think that you need a combination of size, width, and genetically superior arms, along with stellar condition to pull off the most muscular in its totality. With that said, I personally think that Krizo has the best total package in this pose. However, this is just my opinion, and I would love to know who you would choose down below. Anyways, guys, that's my list of who I think is the best in each pose currently. If you enjoyed, a like and sub would be awesome, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.